Yeah, I have all kinds of fancy light things in my room for messing around with. Like I have a little backlight thing, which is super fun to
Ooh,
just make your ears glow and like look
wait.
all.
It looks like it's gonna have a more dramatic effect if you have other lights off and then just
Oh
that
yeah, for
on.
sure.
What do you use it for though?
It just makes things more dramatic. I don't know. It just looks fun. And then when I raise my hand, I can get all this kind of rim lighting and
Oh,
stuff.
nice.
And it's
Like, do
very
you use
good. It
it?
just makes me feel like I'm an artist and I'm
Oh,
being artsy.
do you like sometimes use yourself as a model to like take selfies or something of certain poses and then
I
like,
did a lot when I was learning. When you're learning, it's great. Like there's a lot of time spent just like, oh, look at the way like muscles turn when I move things and
I actually
all
sometimes
that.
do that as well myself. Not for drawing, but like just like it's kind of fascinating to look at the human body. And it's just like it's kind of weird when it's like, oh, this is a hand and it's like I can move it. And it's like and
Hmm.
sometimes it's really beautiful as well. If you look at the shapes of it and it's like, the whole I don't know anything much about fine art, but like how they say always mention things like, oh, the lining of the body or like the curves or like the curvature of the shape and the of the figure. I don't know any of the practical
Yeah,
words
yeah,
behind it.
rhythm, all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like how it accentuates the human body, and I think it's like, yeah, I think it's some. I sometimes do that. I just kind of like just look at my hand and just look at it. But I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I suck at drawing hands. I suck at it.
That's a common issue that
Yeah.
everyone has. They're very difficult. It's yeah. It's a lot of different things happening in
I
very
actually.
intricate ways.
Yeah. You know how I was actually looking at I watched some of your videos and um I love like time lapse videos by the way. It's just so
Hmm.
satisfying to watch, especially if the artist is good. Like when I look at my time lapses, it's just kind of like just lines being added and it's just lines in the end. But like yours is like a lot of strokes all coming together to this like amazing real life like realistic piece of art and it was just really satisfying to watch. But I saw a series where you were like kind of tackling different body parts and subject like elements that are usually really like a lot of people usually find very difficult to kind of nail. And one of the things was like I watched hair. I watched hair and I think I watched a bit of uh like the muscles, I think. But
Hmm.
it was really
Yeah.
fascinating. I think you're a good teacher. Although like
Thank
it
you.
probably like a lot of practice needs to be uh done before I can actually do any of these things.
Teaching's super fun just because it's like really just puzzle solving on its most basic form. You're just like trying to solve puzzles in a way where you can then share the solution of the puzzle you solve and be like,
Oh.
look, I understand how to solve this puzzle. Let me show everyone how great I am at solving puzzles.
Although I feel like it's one thing to know something very well and do something very well, and a completely different matter to be able to like succinctly like convey what you know to the other human beings. You know? I feel like
For
it's like
sure.
it's
Yeah.
almost kind of like two different uh like realms of profession almost.
There is definitely an aspect of like trying to be able to relate something universally. I remember the first time I went into a classroom, and I can't remember the exact topic I was teaching, but I was started talking about something in a way that made super crystal clear sense to me. And I just saw everyone's eyes glazing over, like they had no idea what I was talking about. Like it was just complete nonsense gibberish. And I was like, oh, no one gets the way my brain is like processing this one thing. So it makes you have to figure out like, okay, well that didn't work, so I'll just figure out a new way to hopefully explain it to everyone.
Yeah, like just baby it down as much as possible. Uh it's kind of like yeah, it's just I don't know, like it's kind of like it's kind of like language. Like the reason I feel like I don't think would ever be able to teach well. I'm sure I could get better at it if I practice and practice and practice and have more experience. But the reason I feel like I would find it so difficult is because it's almost like language, how it's almost second nature for you to speak a language, your first mother tongue language. And yet when it comes to a time where you have to kind of explain how the grammar works, or like the composition of sentences work, it's like it's well, like that's just the way it is. I don't know how to explain it further, you know? It's kind of like that, I feel like.
There is a phenomenon. I think there's an interesting thing in art where you have a visual library, and that just means everything you've ever seen in your life. So everything in your visual library just means things you can identify. Like, you know, that's a tree, you know, that's like a rock, and those are like little people statues, and like all these things. You identify them, you understand what they are without someone having to explain it. And when it comes to like identifying even people, like relatives, neighbors, celebrities, whoever, you'll have a very easy time. Like if your favorite celebrity just like, you know, knocked on the door behind you and came through the door, you would instantly recognize them, even if you'd never seen them before. Like, yes. Oh, look, it's Joji came through the door, you know, whatever it might be. But if you were, say, given a sheet of paper and said, okay, like obviously you know this person, you know what they look like, and you know now draw them, replicate it, like show us what they look like. You'll just be struggling. You'll be like, I know what they look like, but I don't know, is their nose this long? Are their eyes this far apart? Like just all these different things that you technically know enough to easily recognize it, because everyone's faces on like a larger scale are just so similar, you know, to an outside person, but there's so many little minute changes, and we can identify all of them, but we can't actually usually recreate them in any sort of accurate way unless we've kind of built that up as a separate, you know, a skill, a separate kind of aspect of our visual library.
Or unless you just trace over a picture of them, which is like the shortcut of it.
But that's the easiest shortcut.
Not authentic at all.
Yeah.
It's like,
but for the record, even if you just chased over a picture, you would probably store way more information about like what they actually look like than just, you know, looking at pictures. There's something very active about having to trace it, where your brain's just going to remember details more.
You know, it's so funny how there seems to be like, we can tackle this, we can come back to this other kind of elements a little bit later, but it's so funny how there are certain kind of things in our lives that are almost kind of really parallel to one another. It's kind of and one of the things that I just realized is that there's a term, I'm pretty sure it's called like critical listening or attentive listening or whatever. It's kind of something along those lines in music making, where it's like you have speakers on or you have your headphones on, and it's not like your usual way of listening to music where you would be just chilling and, I don't know, doing something else and just having the music play in the background. But it's, you sit there just to listen to what you're listening. And it's usually kind of referenced for while you're making your own music, so that you are actually hearing little bits and pieces that needs to be fixed. And so you have full 100% attention to the track that you're listening. And it seems like when you said, you know, it's one thing to kind of think you know what somebody looks like, and another thing to really observe that person's attributes, physical attributes, and really analyze what it is that makes them, you know? How many faces do you think you've drawn so far?
In my life?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. You know, that's a question that I actually think about a lot sometimes. And I guarantee you it's somewhere in the probably hundreds of thousands.
Oh, man.
Like a ridiculously high number, like a super high number.
And I'm assuming they're all different faces, right?
every face. I mean, just because of the thing I like most about drawing faces, like as a warm up or whatever, is that you're never gonna make it exactly the same way, you know, every time. It's just little minute differences in everything. And that usually means that everyone will have its just own little tiny personality that will kind of come out. Just even if you're just trying to draw like standard, boring, normal face just over and over again. Just because, you know, we're so attuned to facial intricacy that it's just kind of exciting.
Yeah. Oh man, that hundreds of thousands. Like, how does that work? I think I've only drawn like line faces. And line faces, there's only so much variance to how line faces can work. It's just a circle and a few expressions. Angry, sad, happy, and
Hmm.
meh. But
Yeah, it's
it's
not
like
it's not that different. I mean, I can draw faces that are very similar, but like I said, they just subtle little, you know, things that are just affected by you know, mood, just the temperature, whatever, you know, and they look like a little bit different and a little bit unique, and it's just fun that way.
how do you kind of select the figures that you are going to decide to draw, like that you're going to portray?
I'm like I'm the worst person when it comes to actually pre-planning and stuff,
Mm.
because I have a lot of weird philosophies about art. Like in a lot of ways, I'm less interested in being an artist and more interested in being like some crazy art philosopher, design philosopher kind of person.
Hell yeah.
Um, so for me, I don't really do much work where I plan anything out. It's more so just make start a shape and then be like, it feels like, you know, this shape will be the next like logical, you know, way to build it out, and you know, just kind of approach it all in this sequential, mysterious way.
Oh wait, so all these faces you're drawing, you're just kind of making them up, not
Yeah.
based on. Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I do tons. I've in my life, I've definitely drawn, you know, thousands of actual faces based on reference, but
Mm.
the vast majority, when you just say how many faces have you drawn, it's just, you know, from
Just
imagination.
imaginative.
Yeah,
Do
just because
you?
I find it very fun.
Yeah. Yes. Do you ever? Have you ever had like an instance? I'm just genuinely curious if you have, if you've had an instance where you you have all this experience in drawing and making up different faces, and you came across a person who actually looks like somebody who you think you've drawn before,
Um,
like a doppelganger of
kind of.
your drawings.
There's definitely like, I guess people will say I have a style. Like I didn't really realize how strong a style I had until everyone started saying, "Oh, that's your style." And I started realizing things. Yeah, sometimes I'll see people that are certainly more kind of falling into my cliche style of faces.
What is
Um,
it?
but
What's your style?
it's tricky to fully sum up because I don't know. It has something to do with like just the line energy and angular kind of nature of things. But generally, it's a lot of eyes that are maybe slightly wider
Bigger?
apart
Yeah.
and just
Okay.
weird, like kind of more accentuated noses and usually taller foreheads. And oh, I don't know. There's a lot of minor just things that seem to come up often. What I actually think is more interesting in some ways is like occasionally you'll see a person in real life that doesn't look like anything you've quite seen or drawn before, and that's always like
Ooh.
super exciting in some ways to just see someone that's like, I've never seen anyone that quite. You just kind of get excited, I guess. It's weird.
Sorry,
And I
I think I
was
just had like a
concerned.
cut of like a bit of a glitch in the connection. But yes, I caught every single word you
Oh,
said.
okay. Yeah.
Um it's kind of like I don't
Yeah. Okay.
it's like um you know, when you see models, they're like models that are like pretty models, like super pretty, like, oh, she's beautiful, like she looks like Aphrodite or whatever. Or
Hmm.
he looks like a god. Like he's like people like people like that person, that actor who played Superman, like Henry Cavill or something.
Well, yeah.
Cavill, like Henry Cavill, like people like him, or like people uh like Charlize Theron, like those people. Like,
Hmm.
I want to say like they're like pretty, but like they're beautiful. Like it's a beautiful, like, oh, Charlize Theron, like, man, beautiful, like beauty itself. But I don't know, maybe I'm just biased here. but but there's also like people, like there are certain like models, usually models, who have like this really very unique facial structure and like body structure that are almost sometimes quite like not like any other people that you've seen in your life. Just like
Yeah.
really animated features. And I've never actually personally seen any of these people in real life, but I've seen kind of pictures of them. Uh and it's kind of fascinating. I wonder what it's like to just kind of live with a facial feature that's really different from like what people
Yeah.
are used to seeing.
I feel like I've probably seen like a handful of people in my life that would, look like they're, runway models or something.
Mm.
And like when you see them, you're actually like, whoa, like their face is super like intriguing and super interesting. And like, it's just kind of captivating. And yeah, there's an interesting thing that at least I realized early on, like as soon as I started getting into art, like suddenly after not too long, after you kind of start drawing a while, like you suddenly get extremely bored of like traditional pretty people and like
Mm.
traditional, like very symmetrical structured faces that
Yeah, the
fall
golden
into the,
ratio and all.
yeah, it just becomes so boring to draw
Mm.
and to just, look at. And you start like seeing someone with like, weirdly crooked nose and like all these, and you're like, whoa, ooh, I want to draw that guy. That guy's super interesting looking. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of appreciation. Like personally, I know myself, like I have a face that's like very like out and in, like I got a tall nose, like, everything's kind of always moving. And when I see like, like a girl or something and they have like extremely like flat face, just, like really flat, just like way beyond anything, I'm just like amazing. Like to me, I'm just like that is the most like amazing, like pretty thing I have ever seen,
Wait,
and
what
like
is
all of that stuff.
wait, hold on. What is a flat? Okay, I need to get to the bottom of this. What is a flat face? I've never seen a flat face in my entire life. What is it?
What do you mean you've never seen a flat face? Like
I've never
usually, okay, usually, like I don't know. There's some famous like I know there's specifically one like famous Chinese supermodel that's kind of famous for
Okay.
having an extremely flat face where it's
Mm.
just like but there's usually like just there's like instead of like the eyes are very much like flattened like eye socket wise, so they're not things
Yeah.
aren't sunken in. But also
Okay,
the
I see.
jaw is usually a bit of an underbite, so their jaw usually comes forward more, and it's just like all the features that usually get exaggerated one way or the other, they're like counter to that. So like everything just winds up being like extremely like in a flat line when you see them from the side.
I think I get what you mean now. I think there's a big, because you mentioned that she was a Chinese person. And I think there might
Yeah,
be a
there's a
racial.
very famous one. Yeah.
Yeah, wait, hold on. Actually, I might have seen her. I don't know. Wait, what was I gonna say?
Sorry.
It's okay. Uh, yeah, I think there's a big kind of racial element that plays a role in that as well.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely. Yeah,
it's like,
because obviously, coming from like a European, we have the very tall nose for
mm,
cold air, like all these different things, and like the more sunken eyes and like the features kind of change. Whereas if you're in a like a very hot environment, you tend to have like a more like flatter nose, more kind of widened out to kind of just interact with the environment and the atmosphere differently.
Hmm.
So obviously you grow up in like, boring, like all my relatives were like from Ireland and everything. So you grow up with a bunch of Irish people and everyone kind of has similar features. And then when you finally get out in the world and you start seeing different features, it's just like, whoa, like that's super, just kind of, it's just fun. It's different. It's unique to see. And you
Yeah.
find yourself just kind of super, like interested in drawing it.
Yeah. I think it's I think that really is it's like that's beauty, just kind of like it's a subject. It's not, maybe we could have a whole discussion about what beauty is, but it's just like in Korea there are, and I'm sure a lot of countries have their own kind of set of beauty standards that obviously change over the course of time. Uh but there's always this kind of one set of standards that are prevalent in an era that represents beauty in that society. And growing up in Korea, we've definitely had our own sets. It's like, I grew up listening to, watching Korean celebrities and figures, like public figures, having certain features that are deemed as beautiful and pretty and just, you know, praiseworthy. And
Yeah.
these features are strangely, most of the time, very kind of westernized, you know, like try to have as deep of your eye sockets as possible. Like it like the deeper it's better, like, and the higher the nose the better, and like the more contours that you have on your face the better. And it's kind of almost like it's very um it's contrary to what a lot of Koreans usually, on the contrary to a lot of the standard Asian features,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
like to
It's
get.
funny because like you're talking about, how it's mostly, I think a lot of that is just, the love, like the grass is always greener kind of vibe. Like, oh,
Mm,
like we all have a certain look, but that person has a different look. So we're kind of just more intrigued by that. So everyone's kind of seeking things from, other cultures and all sorts of stuff like that. There are a couple of things, like things that people look for, that are, it's very funny when you didn't even know like it was a thing people looked for, and it's just not even programmed into your brain. Um, which the reason I bring it up is because it kind of shows that like certain elements of this beauty stuff, like unless they're programmed into you early on, like you don't even recognize them. The big thing, like I've been to China, I've traveled there like on trips before, but like they have this. Maybe it's in Korea too, but this obsession with the idea of like big faces and small
oh
faces.
my gosh, that's such a big thing.
And I like growing up, like I've never
Yeah.
heard anyone ever mention that in any capacity my entire life. So like it was so strange because people would be like, you'd talk to someone and be like, oh, I can't be so like my face is too big, and you're like, what is that, like what does it mean? Because to me, I don't see that as like any kind of determining factor on what they
Mm.
look like. So I'm like, what do you mean? What's wrong with your face? And they're just like, no, it's big, so it's not pretty. And I'm like, okay, like I mean, I don't see that, but okay, sure.
It's that's such a big thing in Korea as well. Like if you think about it, it's so strange. Like it's so strange. I think a lot of it has to do with the proportion. So like the overall proportion of your body and your face when looked from a distance. It's like it has to be at a certain kind of ratio. When your head is too big, I'm presumably it's just kind of messes up the ratio, and that therefore not not beautiful. Um
I just as you talk, then I'm just looking at the little blue person in the background, and they look so grumpy about their large face, and they're
I mean, it's like, yeah, that's actually a part of the whole beauty standards that I never really understood. Um But
Yeah.
I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah, because there are certain aspects of just obviously symmetry is the most universal, like, oh, a more symmetrical face is deemed pretty because it's healthy and, blah, 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 all this genetic stuff. But like, yeah, the big face thing, like it must not be programmed into any level of our like animal kind of side of things because like I can't honestly process like it being attractive or not attractive in one way or the other.
No, not at all. Also, like unless and like you said, unless one's face head is so disproportionately big that you just oh my gosh, it's like you look like a caricature or something. I don't think it's something that we can notice unless we like really, really analyze someone.
Yeah. It's I always find it very amusing to anytime I've ever had to take a selfie with any girl or person that's from like an Asian country. It's a big deal like whose face is closer to the to the selfie. It's always like, put your head up there. I'm gonna be back here. You put your face close to the camera. My face will be back here, just so their face looks smaller. Because anytime it's side by side, they're like, your face is too small. I can't take a picture with you. Put your face up there. Get right up here.
You know a wee bit about Korean culture, it seems. I mean, like maybe Asian culture in general, but yeah, that's also a big thing as well. It's like, I mean, I don't like. It's like if your head is bigger because your head is closer to the camera, then obviously it should be evident in the picture that you're just closer to the camera, not because
they're
your
very,
head is bigger.
It's like a conscious like insecurity about like how close their face is to the camera.
Yeah, apparently it's like a gesture of it's like a gentleman gesture for a couple to like when they're taking pictures,
put your face
like
nice and close.
For the male to be in the forefront.
I love it. I love this stuff. Super.
I don't understand it. I don't understand. But I don't give a damn about whether or not my face is closer or your face is closer. But yeah, that's another one. Like big head, small head. Another.
We'll see how much you care if I start leaning farther back, and now your face is gonna be bigger in the side by side.
At the end of the chat, I'm just gonna be standing right in front of the.
Yeah, it's gonna be an arms race.
Another thing about like the difference between beauty standards, because this is so interesting. There's this obsession with white, like flawless, snow white skin in Korea. And like we have loads of beauty products that are just targeted towards making your skin brighter and whiter and like really white. I'm talking about like pale white, like Twilight Edward white.
Yeah.
Like white.
Yeah. Okay.
I've just always found it so fascinating because in the Western realm, it's all about, olive skin and like healthy tan skin,
I felt so betrayed when I was a kid. Well, no, when I grew up, because when I was a kid, I felt so insecure, so horrible about just, being Irish and having the palest pale skin ever. And it was such a source of constant like insecurity and just miserableness all throughout my childhood. Like I would remember constantly like, I'm just going to go sit outside and burn because I can't stand how white I am. All the other kids are making fun of me. You play like basketball shirts versus skins and you'll take your shirt off and everyone will be like, ah, and then they'll be like, making like the joke, like, come on, you're supposed to take your shirt off. You're still wearing your white shirt or, whatever, because it's so pale. And then it just gave me such a huge insecurity growing up. And then it wasn't, I guess, maybe an Asian girl with a large face can relate to this. But then when I finally met someone like from a different culture, and suddenly like I just didn't even feel bad about it because it wasn't built into their like, it's so white, so weird. Like they were just kind of like, oh, look how white you are. That's fun. I'm like, really? I'm like, you don't find it super annoying or weird, and they're like, yes, yeah.
It's a, I mean, why? Like, I mean, I feel like everybody who is gonna make fun of somebody's look, if they're gonna make fun of somebody's look, they're always probably gonna find something to pick on. You know what I mean? Um,
Mhm.
but I'm just curious, was it like when you were growing up and had this big insecurity with your skin color, was it
Yeah.
about, was it because you were kind of teased with because of it, or was it because of, you think, because you were comparing yourself maybe to somebody that you looked up to, or somebody that you deemed beautiful as, or was it
Well,
something that,
it's it's kind of a double thing because I think it was very much instilled in like just our society, in general, all the kind of figures that you see everywhere, it's a strong value on that very tan skin.
mm,
So then the kids pick up on that, and then they're like, look at them, they don't have the tan skin, so we can pick on them for that and stuff like that. So it's like a combination of the cultural side of things, which leads into the like bullying side of things more so. But yeah, I used to try everything. I used to use like the fake tan bronzers, all that stuff, always trying to get more tan than I
I
could.
feel like those things were, I've never tried them myself, but I feel like those things are gonna get everywhere. Am I right? Like, do they get everywhere? I feel like they
Yeah,
would.
no, it's horrible. Like I remember, I don't know, I was like a kid or something. I think my sister, because she was a couple years older, so she had got some because, of course, she also was like, I'm so pale. No one likes, pale skin, so I got to get more tan. So she had bought some like fake tanner cream, whatever. And I remember just going like sneaking in and being like into her bathroom, being like, I'm gonna get tan too, and like putting it on, and then just like I forget going about my daily thing, and then I like went to bed or something. You wake up and your bed orange, and like every towel you've touched is like orange, and your
Oh.
your parents are just like, what have you done? Made a giant mess.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. What else? What else have you tried? Have you tried like one of those like laser UV tan things?
No, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I remember my sister having like a membership to like a tanning salon, where you go and lay in the UV bed and everything.
Never done
Um,
that myself. Like that
I
would be,
wouldn't imagine it's that popular in Korea, tanning beds.
probably
Maybe.
not as much as it is in the Western hemisphere, probably. But people do it. Um
Hmm.
People do it, but still very much obsessed with white, snow white skin. Um
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less about like blemishes. That's another matter because like if you get acne or if you get pimples that just pop out, it's just intrusive and you don't like it. You don't like how it
That's
looks.
true.
But like
Yeah.
skin color, not so. I don't think it's so much. I think I do agree that you can kind of like style wise, fashion wise, you can wear things that complement your skin. Um and like
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't know too much about fashion myself, but I'm assuming if you got kind of more tanned toned skin, it would be better if you wear more like whiter, kind of brighter tones clothes. And
Yeah.
if you're more leaning towards like whiter side, then it might be better if you wear darker, or maybe
Yeah,
the
in
opposite.
general, in general, the idea is that if you have really white skin, you just want to avoid like pale desaturated tones and earthy
Mm,
tones and things like that, because then it'll just make you look extra like washed out and pale. And usually
mm,
you can get away with like strong saturated dark colors, things of that sort.
okay.
This
Okay.
is all kinds of good fashion tips, and
Not too professional at all.
it's great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I was
mean,
this is for the record, this is very like serendipitous to even get to talk to you and be on this thing. I think I mentioned in the email where I saw your channel and everything, and then when I saw the little thing, it said Overthinker Society. Like I initially, right away, all I said to myself was, "Ha, that sounds like me. I'm the overthinker." And then it was literally that day after I saw it where I got like a little message that was like, "Hey,
Oh,
do you want to?"
nice.
I'm like, "What? That is so weird. That is like the most surreal, like weird coincidence that I've like experienced and things like that."
It's meant to be. It's meant to be.
I was
Overthinking. Overthinking
yeah, I
has
grew
got
up
us together.
yeah, I grew up as a child and I have like the biggest case of just over analyzing, overthinking, hyper insomniac as a child. So I grew up all throughout, basically from like at the time I was like 8 years old onward, all my teenage years, all of those preteen years, just never can sleep at night, just hyper observational, overthinking everything. I'm one of those people who I know it's gonna like upset some people just to hear it because it's gonna make them realize it. But when I used to lie in bed at night, all I would do is like I could almost feel all the atoms in my body almost tingling. But the most thing is that you feel your little pinky toe just slightly touching the toe next to it,
Oh
and it's
man.
like yeah, it's not on your finger, but on your feet. You feel it on your feet, your little toe just touching the toe next to it,
Well,
and
now I know. Now I can feel it.
it drives you insane. Like I used to just not be able to sleep, and I just be start over analyzing and thinking about stuff. I would start processing, the secrets of the universe, all these existential questions, and just kind of going over anything and everything because I would just be lying there miserable because my toes are touching and I can't do anything about it. I would literally, as like a 9-year old, I'd be going around like putting little pieces of tape around my toe to hopefully like separate them so they're not
You are
touching.
pro.
That didn't help at all. It was just something about your being hyper stimulated mentally where it wasn't so much the factor of the toes. That was just the side effect of being like hyper kind of stimulated.
Whoa. I don't think I've ever. I think. I think
I'm
I.
gonna feel I'm gonna feel so bad if you lie in bed tonight and you feel your toes touching.
I think I will. Unfortunately, I think I will. I mean, I'm kind of feeling it now, which is so weird. I don't know. I don't know. It's not something that I can unhear. So, I mean, it's too late, I guess. Um, but thanks for the reminder.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I've ruined your life. I'm sorry.
I was actually curious because I've I'm actually a slightly different case where I was never ever really growing up, never really conscious of my overthinking tendencies. I think I've always been an overthinker all my life. It's just that it's only been a recent realization that this is what it's called. Overthinking is what this is called. My thought process is called. Um and like growing up it was always like I've kind of considered it as just daydreaming and just being really self-reserved and just internalizing just internal dialogues all
Mm,
time at all
yeah.
times. And um I forgot what I was getting to, but what was your puberty like? I know this is such a random question, but
Wow.
because my puberty kind of years, like kind of like mid teen years, like early mid teen years, I think was the peak of like the craziness of
Mm,
overthinking, because like I feel like that's the time where like your hormones are going crazy, and then you start to like develop different like imaginations. I think my overthinking nowadays, it's more leaning towards the realistic side, and now I'm kind of thinking more practically about human feelings that I'm feeling, and now I'm able to kind of diagnose what different feelings are like, albeit very limited. But like growing up, it was like very imaginative and very almost like dreamlike and fictional. And I spent a good good portion of these like puberty years just worrying about things that would never ever happen. I mean, never ever, like, I don't know, but most likely not. And things like Earth like crumbling down to pieces, and like
Yeah.
alien invasion. And
Yeah, I relate entirely. Yeah. No, no, that makes perfect sense to me. Like that's the same experience I had. I would say throughout like getting older, going through puberty and stuff. Like I don't know if that was like directly related because it feels like regardless of that, it was just a slow kind of ramp up into becoming more and more like just like overthinking things as I got older and older. So I'm not sure. Maybe it's tied to that. Um, I can tell you just one random observation. Usually, people that eat more or conversely eat less tend to go through puberty like much earlier or much later in their life. And I was like someone. I was a kid that like hated food because my mom's an Irish, cook. So Irish people have literally the worst food culture in the whole world.
okay.
And I just hated food so much, but so I didn't eat. So I didn't really like hit any kind of growth spurt until I was like practically like 17, like a senior in high school. Like during my senior year, from junior year, I went from being like 5'1" to 6'1", just like a crazy late, like growth spurt when you're like 18 years old. Um, so yeah, it's kind of weird in that
Around the
fashion,
time you
but
get the taste of fast food, and that's when all the hormones are just going crazy.
yeah. Like, oh man, it's so weird to grow up in that like Irish food sensibility culture because I honestly thought that like meat was like just the worst tasting thing, and fish and all these things that I absolutely love now. I thought they were just disgusting because the only way I had ever experienced fish was just my mom just overcooking it and puts
Oh,
like sprinkling
mom,
some lemon on it, and it just
mom.
tasted like so dry. And same thing goes for meat. She grew up in the Irish lineage, so her parents taught her that like you just overcook meat until it's dry and then it's healthy. So everything's just
Until it's
like
beef
dry and
jerky.
chewy.
It's like it's no
It's
longer meat, it's just jerky.
yeah, and it was a horrible way to experience food.
Oh
But
no.
now I love food. Food is like my favorite thing now later in life that I've experienced good food. Did you know
Wow.
that there's more seasonings than just salt and pepper?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean
Yeah. I didn't learn that
like
until I was like 20.
actually I my answer is yes, I know, but no as in I've never really used anything other than salt and pepper. I'm a terrible cook. I'm terrible at it.
Oh no.
Uh we
Do you
do
at least like
overcook.
to go out to eat?
I love, yeah, I mean Korea has like the opposite. It's probably the opposite from Ireland.
Yeah,
Like it's
Korean food culture is like amazing.
it's I dare say it's the best in the world. I mean, it's not because I'm Korean, just because from
I will
my
not, as an objective observer, I will not dispute that. I think I would put like Japan, China, and Korea somewhere in
yes.
the top. But a lot of times I do put Korea at the top.
Yeah. I think China has a very particular food culture. It's
Yeah.
got a very Chinese kind of flavor to it. Uh Pun intended. And
Hmm.
and but Korea, I would say the beauty of Korean food culture is that yes, Korean food in and of itself is amazing, but also we have access to like pretty much all the foods in the world in its best form. Like pizza, yep, here pizza, spaghetti, uh like Mexican food, Korean food, obviously, Japanese food, Chinese food. It's all here. It's all down to a phone call or a little visit downtown, and then just order it. It's great. Food culture
Yeah,
is
I'm
great.
obsessed with like Korean style, like jjajangmyeon.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that is like my one of my top five we're top five in the world dishes of
Yep.
just. And I'm one
So
of those
good.
people that I'm actively always searching out different restaurants just to try their jjajangmyeon and see which restaurant has the best jjajangmyeon.
It's different. It's every Korean Chinese restaurants have different flavor. Like it's slightly ever so slightly different, but it makes a big difference.
Yeah. For the record, if anyone lives in Southern California, the best one I found is at the food court in the H Mart in Diamond Bar. The H Mart's a Korean
I
supermarket.
know
But
what H Mart is actually.
okay, okay.
I know what H.
But there's in the food court, they have a little place that sells jajangmyeon, and it is the best one I found. I've tried it at fancy restaurants, and it doesn't compete with this one.
It's so strange actually that I know H Mart because I actually my dream once was to live in Orange County. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a period where I was obsessed with that region. So I would just like, this is sad, but I never actually got to visit Orange County nor anywhere else in California. But I would like go on Google Maps and like explore on like street views and like imagine myself having food or like shopping at H Mart. Uh,
It it is like honestly, there's so many that I'm sad, with all the COVID stuff. Because one of my favorite things used to just be to go out there and just not even have anything planned and just like drive around and try random restaurants and try random things. Just go to random places and you'd always find new interesting things. Like I'm the
mukbang
type of
mukbang
yeah,
tour is a real thing. It's a real
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And
I'm
it's
the type of
ridiculous.
person who will legit go to two restaurants back to back. Like if I have, like I want this thing from this restaurant and I want that thing from that restaurant, and I'll just go to both of them back to back.
But the real question is, are you one of those people who just eat small portions of the both, or do you must finish both dishes, or
I
more
do
than?
my best. I am not as strong of an eater as some people, but I try my best.
Yeah, I I've always like tried to nail down what my dietary preference is, but I never was able to because it's always changing. And like I at one moment I think that, oh, I'm one of those people who's like quality over quantity. And then I
Hmm.
turn around and I see chocolate. It's like quantity over quality. It's like the more chocolate that I can push down my throat, the better.
Are you
I don't know.
a dark chocolate person or a milk chocolate person?
Definitely milk. I mean,
Oh,
it depends because there are different variations of dark chocolate though.
you don't
Um,
gotta justify it. I 100% like a more milky chocolate than a dark chocolate.
I mean, the thing is, chocolate is so particular depending on the brand and the makers that it's not even about it being whether or not it's milk or dark or white or pink or whatever, but it's about like the ingredient, like other fine ingredients that they put in it, you know?
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
I I personally love the taste of. I think if I had to choose like my ultimate standards for a good tasting chocolate, it would be Lint. Is it like it's a
Yes. No. I agree 100%. I like their little truffles, the
yeah,
lint
like the
truffles.
little ball thingies. They do have
Yeah.
different
Okay. We are
variations.
so on board with each other. I don't think you can fully appreciate it, but
I
yes,
mean,
100% lint
overthinkers.
truffles. Yes, that is my absolute favorite chocolate thing.
Maybe all overthinkers have like the same taste buds
I
and like
don't know.
maybe
I
we're
doubt
like
it.
we're sapient of
You're
our of
really,
our
I can
own.
tell you, you really are upsetting a big group of your audience right now that loves hyper bitter, super 90% dark chocolate.
I mean, I don't personally understand like their why they would love chocolate that's not sweet, but
Yeah, good. Don't placate to them. It's fine. Just lose them. Move on. You're fine. You can have the rest of your audience.
no. But I do love dark chocolate to a certain level. Not like 99.9% dark chocolate, which is like just basically the
Just
this
hyper bitter. It's
yeah,
yeah.
just cacao, the
Yeah.
cacao bean itself. But like I do like it when it's got that kind of hint of bitterness to it. That just adds a bit of like flavor and a bit of punch to it.
Yeah.
And sea salt as well. Man, sea salt is great with chocolate.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh man, once everything's better and the world is a wonderful place, you should come to Orange County. I'll host you and we can go on a food trip around all of Orange County.
I need like probably LA and Los Angeles. I mean, Los Angeles is LA. And the California region is probably the first place that I'm gonna go after this thing is over. This COVID thing is over because, that's where my management is based, and
Yeah.
like, and I've always wanted to visit California as well. It's kind of like my dream place. I thrive in warm weather. I love. I don't actually. I hate the sun. I hate the sun. I hate the sun, but I love like clear blue sky, which is
Yeah.
kind of like it makes no sense because they both go hand in hand. Like without
Yeah. Makes sense to me. I understand. Nothing better than being like in the shade on a nice sunny day.
exactly. There needs to be a shade. I think maybe this is a Korean thing. That's just kind of inherent in me, but I'm kind of obsessed, like a bit paranoid about like UV lights and stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll get you one of those like big UV visors that you can walk around. Like you always see all the
yeah,
older Korean ladies walking around, LA and everything.
and you can expect me to wear sunscreen like Mark Zuckerberg on her on
Yeah.
his
Just all
surfboard.
zinc, pure
Just all
zinc. Putting.
pure zinc, just pure white zinc, just covering up my whole feature. That's expected of me.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, food is great. Food is great, and I use food as a coping mechanism to numb my feelings and the you know how some people drink to forget, some people turn to drugs, other methods to forget about things that are
Yeah.
going on. Mine is food.
Yeah.
I'm not going to deny it. I use food as a coping mechanism. I try not to. It's a bad habit I'm trying to get rid of, but
Yeah. No, I don't know. It doesn't necessarily have to be a horrible habit. Like obviously like if it's unhealthy, but a lot of times, like if I just have like a rough day or just something doesn't go right, I'll just be like, you know what? I'm just going to go out and get like something I really like, for dinner or for whatever. I think it was last week or the week before, I had to do a little presentation online for Lightbox, which is a big art convention.
mm,
And since it was online this year, and I like halfway through my presentation have like 1,000 people watching from that are all industry people, and then my like computer breaks down and dies, and I'm
oh
just like,
no.
oh. And then like I get it back working, and then my internet goes down, and I'm like, no.
Oh
And I
no.
was just so bummed out, but I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna like get in my car. I'm gonna go drive out and get like a Clyde's super spicy hot chicken sandwich, and I know that it'll just be awesome, and then I'll feel better about everything. Go get myself like a lavender milk tea from Blaze, like
Yeah,
all
make it
this
a little
stuff,
bit
and then I'll be
bougie.
like, there, I'll be good.
I think though there is a bit of a difference between treating yourself because it seems like that, which is what you did last week after the little breakdown of the, of the meetings. It's like I think it's very actually healthy to give yourself a little pat in the back and say it's okay. I'll treat myself. You've done your best with some good food and a little bit of a extra thing that you usually wouldn't have normally. But
Yeah,
another thing, probably, which is more so my case of using food as a coping mechanism, which is it's stuffing, just stuffing it. just and it's not even about it's not even about it's not even about the quality of the food. And now we're turning more towards the quantity where it's like stuff it down until I can't think no more. Like I can't think because all the blood from my head is now rushed to my stomach
yeah,
trying to
sounds like a
digest this
great
thing.
strategy. I imagine it feels really bad, like a little
Feels
bit later
really
though.
bad. Feels really
Yeah.
bad. And oh man, like food coma is a real thing. Doesn't feel good. It's like it's and you have a hangover the next day as well. Like you get
Yeah.
hangover. Uh
Yeah.
Physical hangover, but also mental hangover that you just like bombarded your body with this food that you don't need. Uh
Speaking of which, that's a very like the thing I associate that most with is Korean barbecue, all you can eat culture, where it's
oh,
just
yeah.
all you can eat Korean barbecue. And I always just eat until I'm like, basically like sweating meat and just like I'm not eat anymore and then feel horrible the next day.
It's designed to make you lose control. It's designed that way. You expect yourself to lose control when you go to an all you can eat buffet or an all you can eat Korean barbecue. You can't.
Yeah.
You're not going there with a sane mind. You're going there to go crazy tonight. Like you're going there to come out with a 10-month pregnant tummy. That's the
Yeah.
aim.
Uh,
That's the
I
aim.
used to I used to go to one that had all you can eat like froyo, and they had pineapple flavored frozen yogurt, and that was part of the all you can eat. And I would just be like, even when I was stuffed with meat, I'd just be like, no, I just need another cup of frozen yogurt. It's so good.
Yep, that sounds like me every day with my fridge. Do you are you a social eater? Do you think of eating as a social activity?
Yeah, to some extent, like it's not an integral part of it, but yeah, I like that aspect of it.
Mm. Because
I'm,
I I think it's very particular with eating, but it might be the same with other areas in my life. But I usually can't focus on like two activities at once. So I can't eat and like talk to people at the same time. If I do, then either one of them I'm not going to be putting my 100% in. It's just going to be either me just focused too much on the food that I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm just saying gibberish. I'm just saying whatever that's just coming out of my mouth, or I'm too focused on the conversation that I don't know what's going into my mouth, you know?
Yeah, I
Uh
relate this back to art a lot because I even made a video on focus, but I consider focus to be a very important kind of thing to understand about yourself as,
mm,
like an artist or creative or anything.
mm,
To get into some of my like nonsense, weird theories and whatever, I like to consider that instead of just like the five basic senses like hearing, smelling, seeing, all that stuff, I really consider like your inward perception of your own thoughts to be
mm.
like your another sense that's integral to making up everything that's going on. So in some ways, like when
Yes.
you're fall asleep at night and you're dreaming, that's just because you can't, all of your other senses are dulled. And like a blind person, like the only sense that's actually really still active at times is just that inward, kind of sense with no context of reality and the external senses. So in a lot of ways, like I kind of see it like that. And for art, it's kind of important to always be looking for the right level of focus, because you kind of need to. It's kind of this gets into a whole slew of other theories and things,
No,
but
it's all right. Go
um,
for it.
okay, let's go.
I'm all
In
ears.
general, my main premise on art and everything is that aesthetics and all the design stuff, it's generally basically stuff that's already inside us, and we're just trying to kind of discover why we like the things we like.
Mm.
Because you don't have to train someone to find something more appealing than something else. Like it's universal that a good design will look better to everyone. It's not something you have to teach them to appreciate. And that has a lot to do with just internal factors of, like we like certain comforts in like shape hierarchies in different kinds of understandable flows, rhythms, all these different things. Those are just kind of innate animal things because we like to understand our world. We like to feel comforted by our world. So aesthetics is mostly about that. And to go further, it's then becomes like about trying to like decipher that stuff already inside you and being like, okay, why do we find this more appealing than that? And you can be like, oh, well, there's a certain hierarchy of like big, medium, small like shapes that go into it. And that makes us feel a little bit better with it. So if you acknowledge that like a good chunk of aesthetic knowledge is already built into our more animalistic side of our brain, then the goal of designing in art a lot of times and making good art is actually to try to be in a state where you're not over focused on what you're doing, but instead you're enacting a little bit of your intuition when it comes to making lines and stuff. Because you'll find that if someone's slightly more intuitive, like when they're just not overthinking it, they'll tend to make decisions that are kind of lining up with what good aesthetics would be, just because they're intuitively getting in touch with that that more animal side of this is more appealing than that. And since it's already in us, then you can get it out of it just by being a little bit in the right frame of mind and finding the right way to interact with that. So like I'm a big proponent of teaching kind of other fringer aspects of like fundamental art, such as like how fast and like what tempo you draw at. I consider that very important for becoming better and better at designing. You need to find the speed that actually makes you more aesthetically appealing, find the size, the speed, but also the level of focus, because certain people like me, we focus way too much on like everything. And if I try to draw with full concentration, I just can't make good intuitive decisions. Everything gets a little forced. It becomes a little stiff and a little awkward. But for me, like personally, if I just listen to music while I'm drawing, that's enough of a mental like distraction just to distract our little sixth sense, our little third eye
Just
there
numb it
in
a
the
little
brain.
bit, just the
Yeah,
tiniest bit.
it's just like squinting it out of focus just a little bit. Like it's kind of squinting. And then I'm not really overthinking every little line I'm making. I'm just kind of, more so like thinking about music and just making shapes and kind of being half there, half not there. But it's all about finding the right level of focus, just that right, like, obviously you can over focus, like even your eyes, like you can focus further, you can focus closer. You got to kind of find the right distance of focus to where you're like being your most productive. And I think that works for our kind of third eye level of sixth sense focus as well. So a lot of my art theories revolve around aspects of that stuff.
It sounds also like balance plays a very big role in it as well, because it's like
Yeah.
you can't rely on your intuition, and you can't find that right balance between channeling into your intuition and that kind of knowledge part of your brain unless you know what makes something beautiful to like on an animalistic level. So unless you have that prior knowledge that is learned with your kind of cognitive mind of what makes something appealing, then there is no intuition versus knowledge that comes
Yeah.
afterward.
There is an aspect of like needing to train your intuition to be slightly more, I guess, valuable to you. Like there are certain exercises and drawing things you can do that will kind of build up a natural kind of inclination to maybe do good design choices and stuff. But even then, there's so many factors that go into a good design decision that it's kind of hard to process everything. Like, am I balancing my tangents? Am I balancing my level of open space and dense space and all these things? So if you can kind of internalize them more and not make them like an active decision, but try to find a way to force them into your subconscious, then if you're drawing intuitively, you'll find that all that stuff starts to just naturally come out. Like you'll be making all the good decisions by not thinking about them.
I studied a bit of graphic design, and whilst I was studying it, I learned a lot about, the hierarchy like you just mentioned, but just in typography and, like more towards leaning towards the graphic design elements. And, we learned things like why certain typefaces are beautiful and why Comic Sans is a terrible typeface. And things like, the space between lines and paragraphs, what is the most ideal space between lines, um things like that. And I think the beauty of it is that it does get ingrained in your kind of knowledge to a point where now, after having learned that so many times, when you see something like a like quote unquote bad graphic design, something that's obviously bad on a to a graphic designer's point of view, it's bad, but you just know that it's bad. But I think the beauty of it is that sometimes actually you can kind of step out from that intuitive mindset to a more conscious level and now start to actually break free from that rule of what makes things beautiful. And I think um and now I'm just philosophizing
Oh, yeah,
philosophi-
philosophically.
philosoph- philosophi-
Mm-hmm.
philosophizing
Mm.
philosophizing my aesthetic. But you know how I like doodle a lot, and I love crude drawings, and I love using Comic Sans, and I love Arial. I love these like primitive looking stuff. But from the graphic designer in me knows that it's not, it goes against all rules of what makes an elegant, beautiful design. But the something that's bigger than the graphic designer in me says, okay, but maybe I can try to find the balance between the two, mix in a little bit of good design, and then leave out the rest, and then try to see if I can get a little bit more funky with it. And I think that's where it begins to be this really beautiful thing where you're using your knowledge on a very creative level. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think yeah, to like once you get we tell obviously I tell students I teach art and stuff. Like I give them kind of rules that are more so just meant to prevent the most common bad habits. So
Mm.
like in graphic design, you'll give them like, hey, don't use that font, don't use that. But I fully kind of like at a certain level, once they understand like the whys and hows, like you can do it, like you can use anything, you can break any of those previous rules and kind of know how to just exploit every different like emotional reaction to every different thing, to create any kind of amazing results using whatever means possible. So
Mm.
there's an aspect of that.
Yeah. Do you think uh do you kind of do you lean towards trying to capture a realistic tone to your art when you're making art, or do you kind of is there a kind of underlying vision for the aesthetic that you're going for when you're making your art? Curious.
I am aiming for a realistic sense of like color and lighting and
Mm.
all those kind of fundamental things because I find that's like it's just mentally challenging to be able to recreate all of those things and make them look good. So for a challenge's sake, yeah, that. But when it comes to like actual content, usually the goal is more so create something that's just weird and that's you've never seen anything quite like before, but then like confine it and contain all of those good lighting, color, and everything in it
Mm.
to make it feel like it's kind of realistic. Um, I mean, personally, the thing I love more than anything in art is to just like make chaos and then use my visual library to just try to pull something out of it, kind of like a Rorschach test, but like on like the 10th level Rorschach test where you're just like colors like values, like everything's thrown in and you're trying to pull stuff out. And then not only that, but then to be able to pull it out and then render it with realistic kind of fundamentals of lighting, form, and value and all that. Like that's super fun for me.
Is that what you were trying to do in one of those like video series where it's like Paintscape, I think?
Paint exploration.
Yeah. Is that
Yeah,
what you mean?
that is exactly what that is. The entire premise is just make chaos and then try to find something recognizable in the chaos and then pull it out. And then once you feel like you've pulled it out, like I don't care because this is not about the product, it's about the process. So then you just destroy that and then you find like try to find another thing and then pull that out. And then once you pulled it out, destroy it. Then it's just that not getting attached to anything. It's that vibe of just, you know, kind of having fun, enjoying the like smearing around the childlike side of just like the process of art rather than caring about products.
Oh, that's such a valuable uh kind of values to have, because I think, I don't know, maybe ego plays a part in this, but so many times you get really kind of attached to your work, and it's so easy. I mean, personally for me, it's so easy to work on something, whether that may be music or video or whatever, and start to think this is good. Like I don't want to, like, I need to run with this. And it's like it kind of like it kind of sometimes, not always, but sometimes you get so caught up in trying to preserve what you've created so far to a point where you kind of lose sight of what's the most important, which is to have fun and to explore and to try new things, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I sometimes, I sometimes struggle with kind of being too precious with my work. Um, Not that I think it's like the greatest or anything, but I've put a lot of effort into this, and I don't want to let it go. Uh, I think in your case, it's actually almost justified that you technically have documented it by
That's
kind of
true. It's
screen
cheating. It's
recording.
cheating. It's a little
Yeah.
bit of cheating.
So like people do still get a glimpse of what you are going through. So it kind of
Yeah.
exists still.
It's
Um
it's me telling people not to care about, you know, preserving stuff, but then also preserving
Preserving
stuff.
it as well.
But for the most part, I used to do those exercises and literally just do them without recording and not save, you know, anywhere along the line and just close it and not save it at the end. And I found that very helpful. So, I wanted to share it, and obviously I got to record it to share it. But yeah, there is a little bit of that vibe. Although what's really fun about rewatching them is that every, day or week you kind of become a new person and your psyche has changed a little bit from who you were. You watch it and then you see like so many things that you were like, oh, I didn't notice that. Like I should have taken things in that direction, because your kind of Rorschach test of everything has shifted in its visual library toward another direction. So I kind of like having them just to be able to look at and be like, oh, now I see a whole bunch of different things that I never noticed before.
It's kind of like a indirect self-discovery, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Art is so much fun. So is music. It's funny because almost every artist I know like secretly wants to be a musician. And then
Do
like I
you?
think a lot of musicians kind of want to be artists, and there's kind of this like back
That's
and
actually
forth.
really true. That's really true. Because I mean, no, I'm not speaking for all musicians and all artists, but it's
No, go
like
for it. Speak for them all.
uh, it's like almost a lot of the times they always like kind of seep into each other. You see artists do a little bit of like DJing and a little bit of like kind of like they call
Every
it.
single artist I know plays guitar.
Do you play it? Are you
Of
musically
course, I
inclined?
play guitar. Every artist plays guitar. That's a fact. If you're a professional artist, you play guitar.
I mean, I consider myself a musician and I don't play guitar.
Well, if you were like a artist, an illustrator working in illustration, you would probably play guitar.
Really?
Hmm.
Do you? Oh, I wonder why.
We just have a fascination with other aspects of creativity that we're not like a part of. So we want to, indulge in them.
Are you? I mean, it's like I don't think it's a bad thing. It's like it's art, and at the end of the day, it's art. It's about self-expression, and I don't really personally see the point of trying to, you know, compartmentalize what different arts are. I think they all kind of become one thing. At the end of the day, the purpose is self-expression and inspiring through that self-expression. And I think that's the ultimate purpose of all artists out there. Um, but just in different mediums.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of just expression, vulnerability, all that good stuff. I
Yeah.
think one of the reasons I was drawn to your kind of music and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of factors. I think I originally, when I first saw it, I just tweeted something out that was like, check this out. It's like anxiety pop. It's like a new genre of just anxiety and pop music. And then, but it really stuck in my head. Like, just, it was so like catchy and everything. All the songs, like every song I've listened to since then, I'm like, this is super catchy too. And I think, in my view, like the most important aspect of like being a creative and making a interesting creative thing is always that aspect of vulnerability and like, letting people experience flaws rather than strengths. I know it goes for writing. Like if you're going to write a character or write a book, you write the story and the characters based on their flaws, not based on like, oh, well, they're really good at this and they're really good at that. No, instead you base it on, well, they're afraid of this and they're insecure about that, because that's how you write a good character.
Mm.
And it goes the same thing for a lot of the artists I know, a lot of just musicians and everyone. It's always like they're just kind of exposing a little bit of more so weaknesses or vulnerability, and that's kind of what's really making people connect with it on like on a deeper level, because they're like, oh, okay, I can relate to a lot of this way more, based on weaknesses and based on strengths.
Mm.
I don't know if you do you watch a lot of movies?
Uh, probably not as much as I want to, actually, to be honest. Uh,
There's a
but
really
I have watched quite a few
oh,
movies.
okay, because like one of my favorite uh, kind of screenwriters and everything has always been Charlie Kaufman. And I don't know if you know him, but he did like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless
Right.
Mind,
Yeah, yeah.
Michael, all that stuff.
Got it.
And like anytime I've purposely tried to watch any talks he's given on like screenwriting stuff, and he's always just harping on like the importance of just being as vulnerable as you can be. And you see that in everything he writes, where they're always I think he's definitely an overthinker because he overanalyzes everything, and you see it come through. Like in, I mean, that's the entire premise of adaptation. The one where it's literally a movie about him writing it, the adaptation about the thing, and it's like got this levels of meta commentary, but it's all about the creative process and just how he overthinks it nonstop the entire way. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, no one's ever just been this just honest and vulnerable about every aspect of the creative journey. And I just find that super kind of interesting. Now, I will say, there is like, I don't recommend his movies to people for the most part, because there is an added aspect of like, he's so kind of honest and so vulnerable and so over analytical that I feel like it's actually like, if you don't have the right kind of mind state, they're extremely depressing kind of concepts are being talked about. Like usually anytime love is brought up in his movies, it's extremely like depressing, and kind of like that sense of like acknowledging, that, love kind of fades, or that it does this thing,
Yeah.
your passion can fade for a certain person. Like Anomalisa is like one of the most depressing movies I think I've ever seen, just because of that. Like it's all about that joy of trying to connect, and then also that, realizing that nothing, that feeling just doesn't last. Like it's so fleeting.
Just like a brutal shedding of light on the truth, on
Yes.
like on what is going through your mind, and not
Yeah.
just like the brutality of it.
Yeah. Every time I watch one of his movies, I'm like, that was amazing. And someone's like, oh, so I should watch it. I'm like, no, don't watch that. Don't watch that. That will just make you a little too, a little too much light on things
Sad.
that are better left up to, just, a little blissful ignorance. It can go a long way.
I think though that goes to say that, first of all, showing vulnerability doesn't have to be literally you just sitting there and, I don't know, crying. But
Yeah.
it could really take different forms, like that screenwriter, how he makes movies about his presumably overthinking brain, and how I am kind of making songs about it in a sometimes humor, sometimes very honest, sometimes something in between way.
Yeah. A little absurdist, I guess.
Yeah, and I think everybody has different ways of showing their vulnerable side. It's just that we don't see that much creativity that's surrounding vulnerability. And I think, I really do think that there needs to be more, you know, more enlightenment in that area. Is that something that you consider very important in your contents as well then?
To an extent, because like I kind of mentioned, I'm more so obsessed with these underlying philosophies of art and like
Mm,
design. Like I'm trying to work on a design theory book and I want it to be like super like next, kind of like stuff no one's really talked about too much.
yeah.
So like but in order to accomplish that, I'm trying to incorporate a lot of aspects of it that deal with, just hints of vulnerability, but more so, I think the absurdist kind of statement was true because I think it's good to like acknowledge, certain ways you feel, but do it with a lightheartedness, a little bit of absurdity where it's not like depressing because I don't think the end goal of overthinking things and being smart needs to be depressing. I think there's certainly a curve of where it goes down and it becomes depressing, the more stuff you know about everything. But I do feel like eventually you come back straight up to the top and you're like, okay, it's like you can just kind of be like, so what? It's fine. I can enjoy everything even if I understand all these aspects of it. Like at the end of the day, it's a little absurd, but you can still be just happy and just enjoy things, find your own little enjoyments
And
um
it's just the repetition of that over and over again. Just again and
yeah.
again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
That is really how it goes. And I think that's the beauty of it, knowing that there is a curve of things. If you feel confused as frick today and your head is about to explode from all the overthinking,
Yeah.
know that there are definitely going to come a time where you feel a lot, better, and can is able to think a bit more straightforward and simply. But also there would also come again the time where you start to overthink again, and then again and again and again. But just
Yeah.
that expectation alone can actually bring a lot of solace to people, that it's just an ongoing thing. And it's not depressing at all. I think it's a hopeful thing almost.
Well, that's good because when I was your age, I found it very like I thought my mid early 20s, that kind of range, like I just thought that was like I was definitely at the like overthinking bottom of the curve where it
Just
was just
keep
like
going. Just keep on.
it was just like everything. It was just like, oh, the more I think about everything, like it just never leads to positivity. But luckily, eventually, like I started kind of
Mm.
realizing or finding more positive ways to approach everything. But definitely not in my early mid
Yeah, it
20s.
does
That was a
definitely.
dark time.
Sometimes the lows last a little bit longer. It's like, is this normal? I don't think it's ever lasted this long before. But, just hang on
Yeah.
tight, because it's just gonna like dip up and up and up. Sometimes dip down again and then dip up
I think
again.
you'll probably find. I'd be curious to know long term, but I think you'll probably find that everything's kind of way more just always fun and on the up when you're like like the older you get,
Oh yeah.
kind of.
I can't wait to grow like old, like old, like ancient old. I can't wait until I'm like 90 or 80, when I can worry about nothing else but my cats and my koi pond and my garden.
Oh, for the record, like having a cat in my life, it's like such a joy. I know you don't have one yet, and that's just going to
That
make you
would
feel
make
bad
me
saying that. I'm
super
sorry.
jealous.
I'm sorry for saying it, but having a cat is so delightful and wonderful.
Actually,
you're so not happy with me saying that, but it's fine.
Actually, I think that's a good note to end this talk, because I want to leave this with a request that you send me some pictures of your cat, please.
Oh, for
on
sure.
Email, please.
Just
'Cause
try not
I
to
want
get
you to remember
too
that.
uncontrollably jealous, because you might just get spiraled into a rage of jealousy.
Oh man, I know it's gonna crush me, but also at the same time, I want to see cats. I just want to. I love I don't I love watching, I love looking at cat photos and videos, but I also love it when it's like a cat that is. This is so sad. It's like when it's a cat that's like somewhat related to me, like, you know how I was talking to you, and if I get a cat picture of your cat, then it's like I'm somewhat related to that cat, and there's a there's some sort of connection where, like, yeah, does that make sense? It's not like
Yes,
some
no,
odd
it does make sense.
It's not like some odd random cat picture that the cat doesn't even know who I am. I mean, your cat probably would never know who I am, but at the same time, I at least could get the satisfaction that
No, my
I know
cat's
that cat.
actually a big fan, huge fan. One of your biggest fans.
I mean, just like, I know that cat, I know that cat. It's a cat that I know. I've heard of, at least. So I would love you to have that as like the last takeaway of this of this talk.
Okay, delightful. Can I make one request as another last takeaway?
Okay.
Okay, this is weird. I'm making it. This is my goal. My current goal in life is to have Suli's music be featured on KCRW's Morning Becomes Eclectic. I can't even talk. Which is just the coolest LA radio station, where they just play like you would totally fit in so well on it. So we gotta rally around and try to find a way to get your music on Morning Becomes Eclectic on KCRW.
Morning becomes
Go bug and lit. And lit is the person who runs it, and just find a way. I want to hear it on my radio when I'm driving to like work sometime.
Okay, I'm gonna look into it. I'm definitely gonna look into it, but only after you've sent me your cat pictures.
Fair enough.
That was great. That was so much fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're so much fun to talk to. I hope we get to like keep talking and
You're
hanging out.
always welcome back. You know my email. We can always keep talking.
Is that a good way to get in touch through email?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. Is that where I should send you cat pictures?
Delightful
cat pictures?
Yes. High quality.
High quality, yes.
Okay. Thank you for coming. It was so much fun. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. No.
Okay.
You're awesome. Keep being successful.
Oh, thank you. We're just getting started. I'm gonna get one of those. I'm gonna get one of those.
What? What?
I can't point at it. It's like that. I can't point at it because it's your screen.
What are you pointing at? A tree?
The
a rock? A YouTube button?
Yes. Because mine is like on. It's kind of hanging sideways.
What's wrong with it? It looks like it's sad.
Yeah, it's just kind of tilted, but I will get one of them.
I'm going for the million. That's my goal. I gotta get the goal.
I'm sure you will. Everyone go check out Sinix's YouTube channel. I'm gonna put all the links down with everything else. Ooh. So yep, that's gonna be there.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming, for talking.
Yeah, bring me back sometime. I can talk about so much wild and crazy stuff because, like I said, I'm overthinking anything and everything at all times.
All fellow overthinkers are welcome.
Great.
But thank you. And I'm gonna go.
Bye.
Bye.